It's your girl, Professor Cinephile, and I'm back with a review of the latest Spike Lee film, Highest to Lowest. Spoiler alert, I will be discussing this film probably in a lot of detail because I have a lot of thoughts about this film. So if you don't want it ruined, come back when you're done, as usual, and then you can watch my thoughts, share your thoughts in the comments. And I'm happy to, see what you all are thinking about in terms of this film. Okay. Uh, I would be remiss if I did not share that I have a bias when it comes to Spike Lee. Spike Lee is my favorite director of all time. Um, my dissertation used Spike Lee films. I've studied this man for decades, for a very long time, let's just say. Um, and I consider myself a bit of an expert when it comes to Spike Lee, but also I understand that I am watching Spike Lee films through the lens of someone who um, is part of his intended audience. And a lot of times, um, I read reviews and critiques of Spike Lee's films from people who I think to myself, he make this film for you. So it's okay that you don't connect to it because it wasn't for you, that kind of thing. So I try to think about that. I also recognize that film critique and the whole film criticism kind of industry is largely white and largely male. And many of those people think that they're smarter than anybody else. So they know better about all film, including films by Black directors about Black people, better than the people who live these experiences. And so I just kind of give that preface because it's important. But I definitely have seen some commentary. You all know that I generally try to avoid reading other people's commentary or their thoughts on these films. But I think that I've seen some commentary that I was just kind of like, I'm not sure you're where you need to be, but that's okay. Everybody's allowed to like what they like. All right, enough with the preamble. So, what is Highest to Lowest about? It is a remake of Japanese film that is a remake of another one, and it's the same kind of idea. I would classify it as a heist film. I have a whole thing about heist films. I would put it in that it is kind of basically a heist film, a hip hop heist film, and I'll get into that in a second. There's a father who's wealthy, kind of. His money is tight. He's become really popular because he's a record exec. Everybody knows him, top of the line, top of the game. Kind of a bit of a big deal, possibly a gangster, not really sure. He's played by Denzel Washington. His name is David King. He Denzel playing David King, as usual. And so he's married, they have a son. They get notification that the son is kidnapped. And the person is asking for $17.5 million in like Swiss francs and in order to get the son back. Then they realize that it's not his son that was kidnapped, but rather the son of like one of his closest friends and his support team. And he has to figure out, damn, am I gonna put up all this money for somebody else's son? It was a case of mistaken identity, so he goes through this whole thing trying to figure out, am I gonna help him? So there was tension in that. Um, because yeah, when it's your kid, right? You willing to do, pretty much anything. You're willing to move mountains. When it's someone else's kid, even if they're close, you might question, especially because the money wasn't disposable to him like that. A lot of it is tied up in these deals he's trying to make. He's trying to save his record company from being bought out and all kinds of things. So there's a bunch of tension there, right? Eventually it becomes a thing where he does agree to try to help the kid and he pulls together the money because he was ready to go for his son. So he pulls together the money. He's willing to transfer this money to save this kid because it is the child of his like most loyal, closest friend. And he remembers that he's from the block and like he's remembers what loyalty looks like and what family looks like, and those kinds of things. So he agrees to do it. It's a whole thing. Um, and, you know, it eventually ends up where he's able to confront the person, and the person happens to be this young man who has looked up to him for most of his life, and all he's wanted was a record deal. And basically, kind of went to this extreme pretty much to get his attention and to kind of punish him for the fact that he never got a record deal from him and was never able to connect with him and be noticed by him and to get mentorship from him, right? So he's trying to make him pay. And then they end up connecting. Dude ends up going to jail because he kidnapped people and can't do that. He's extorted people, all this kind of stuff. So it was a whole big thing. And that person is named Young Felon, and that is played by rapper A$AP Rocky, also known as Rihanna's baby daddy. Cool. All right. So now that you know the plot and you know what happens, let's dig into the film itself. All right, so there's certain things that I look for when I watch Spike Lee films. One of them is iconography. Spike Lee is very intentional about representing Black art and Black iconography. He's going to tell a story in itself just by what he has up, okay, on the walls and things like that. So some of the things we see are Toni Morrison paintings, we see Basquiat's Stardust, we see Kehinde Wiley paintings. We see there's a scene where there's a flag of the 5% Nation of Islam, and it's next to pictures of Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad. Um, and that's important, right? Because it's representing let me pull back. This is a film about hip hop, okay? And that's how I want people to watch this film. This film is about hip hop. It is a love letter to hip hop set in New York City, the birthplace of hip hop, specifically focusing on the Bronx. Okay, the characters are from the Bronx. The actors that he pulls in some folks from the Bronx like Ice Spice and things like that. He talks about the Yankees a lot. They're riding the 4 train. So much of it is shot in the Bronx, right? Why? Because the Bronx is the birthplace of hip hop, right? So this is a film about hip hop, okay? And it is an intergenerational film about hip hop. And so if you're going to discuss hip hop and its roots and you're going to be in New York City, you cannot do that without talking about the 5% Nation of Islam because the influence that they had, particularly when you look at groups like the Poor Righteous Teachers and the Wu-Tang Clan and others, and think of Rakim, you have to think about how they influence a lot of the lyrics and the messaging and the vibes, right? So I thought that that kind of thing was really important, and to have that manifest in Jeffrey Wright's character is super important. By the way, I don't believe Jeffrey Wright in this role for a second. I'll come back to that. You see images of Marvin Gaye. He has people name drop Spellman. He plays, iconic music like "Ain't No Stopping Us Now." Things that are super important to Black people, of course. That's who Spike will always prioritize, even in his films that have mostly white people in it. He's going to prioritize Black people. He normally prioritizes Brooklyn, right? So there is some Brooklyn stuff in there. There's a reference to Junior's Cheesecakes. There is a Brooklyn Dodgers versus the Bronx Yankees scoreboard, but again, kind of bringing that back to the Bronx. This is the first time for me, as a person from the Bronx, that I felt like Spike pivoted from the planet of Brooklyn and remembered that the Bronx exists. And the Bronx is so important and so important for New York hip hop lore, right? I like the Spellman name drop because he did go to Morehouse and kind of representing that. He always manages to represent for HBCUs in some kind of way, so that is really important. So I love that. I love when I'm looking for iconography, I'm going to get it with Spike Lee. He does not make any mistake. This is a black ass movie. Okay, I don't care whose money is paying for it. The other thing that I really love with Spike Lee, naming, character naming for Spike Lee is super important. And I really began to pick up on that with Jungle Fever, I believe that was 1991. with the main character played by Wesley Snipes. His name was Flipper Purify. And this is a man who cheated on his black wife with a white woman. So Flipper, get it? Okay. I'll let it go. And then Gator Purify, like the Purify family and this whole like adherence to Jesus and everything. Oh God, anyway, Spike Lee is really good with naming, right? And so using this character, David King, right? King David, get the biblical references there. And then you have Paul Christopher, who is played by Jeffrey, right? And Paul Christopher kind of becomes this conscience for King David. Paul, think of the Apostle Paul, Christopher, that Christ kind of figure. He really is that kind of, and it's interesting that he's a five percenter and he's Muslim, right? And I just thought that that was really interesting. Then the role that Aesop Rocky plays is young felony. Okay, so Spike Lee is always signifying. Spike Lee is always using hyperbole, particularly within Black cultural, situations. He will use hyperbole. Go back to Bamboozled and think about that. And some other films that he does where he kind of goes over. So young felony, he's making a point here, right? I love that he does that, and that was something that I immediately picked up. I was like, oh, King David, awesome. But also thinking about this character, young felony. This I read Spike saying that he's the most important character, and you won't pick up on that if you're not watching it this way and knowing that Spike said that, because for me, Young Felony represents hip hop right now. And if you're watching this, there's so much that this young man is saying and the interactions that he's having. It's so representative of where hip hop is right now and the way hip hop has been. It's hard for me coming from the feminist perspective to defend hip hop because hip hop music does not exist without misogyny. And the reason that hip hop music cannot exist without misogyny is because if it was created to speak the pain and the suffering of, these primarily men, young Black and Latino men, the only people they have power over are the women in their lives. And so misogyny is essential to hip hop culture in order, at least hip hop music, in order for it to be successful, in order for it to thrive, in order for it to voice the angst of the primary players. It has to be riddled with misogyny because that is the only outlet that they have, right? And so thinking about that, like his young felony is hip hop now, this bastardized, co-opted, incorporated, bought and sold 1,000 times over by white people, this is what you end up getting. You get a young felony. You get someone so completely disenfranchised and so disconnected from the cultural roots of hip hop. All he sees is the money. He doesn't care about the music. He chastises King David for still caring about the music. He's like, you got to get with the times. Nobody cares about the music anymore. It's all about the streams. It's all about the algorithm. It's all these things, right? There's a lot of critiques in this film about this, right? So it is definitely a critique of late stage capitalism. It is a critique of AI. It is a critique of the diminishing of the production of art by relying heavily on, machines and robots and artificial intelligence. As Spike Lee is somebody who uses really like I want to say organic kind of filmmaking. And one of the things that makes him brilliant is that he does kind of go old school with his approach to filmmaking. I can understand why someone like him is kind of like, with the AI stuff. I don't, kind of a purist. That's what the word I'm looking for. As an auteur, he's a bit on the purist side. And so we could expect the critiques of these things, and I'm happy that they're there. But if you wrap that in your understanding of hip hop, right? And I've been there, 46 years old, from the Bronx, born in 79, like I am hip hop, right? Understanding and seeing how it has changed over time, King David represents, in many ways, the old school making it, right? So he was from the gutter. They're from the same block, and that's really interesting. They're all from the same neighborhood, pretty much the same block. And he made it. He made it, got his own record company, was helping artists come somewhere along the way. He lost his way a bit, wasn't able to keep up to make the, to be as profitable as he once was because of how things have changed. Again, the algorithm, social media, everything is about streams, everything is about going viral, and it's less about the art. So there's a whole commentary in this film about all of that through Young Felony kind of representing hip hop music and hip hop and where it is right now. And it's very clear that Spike is upset about that. Spike is also Gen X, older Gen X. He lived through it. He was there when it all began. And so a lot of times people get on us, they're like, oh, you're all get off my lawn. And in some ways we are because we watched the steady decline. And I thought it was signifying as hell for him to have Ice Spice in this film. You take literally one of the worst rappers to ever pick up a microphone, one of the most lackluster performers, one of the people that is most likely to be considered a plant or an op. And that's who you put in the film. And she's not even smart enough to realize that that's why she's in the film. She's not there because she's talented. She's there because she represents exactly everything that he is critiquing about the modern stage of hip hop, the modern state of hip hop. And that's where I get, a little, my thing with Spike is always in his treatment of women, which you should just go ahead and read my dissertation where I elaborate on that. But if that is what he did, then you're just like, damn it, Spike, that wasn't right. But then it's also perfectly right for exactly what he's trying to do. And she just caught a stray. But is it really a stray if you don't recognize it as a stray? I don't know. But anyway, um, if you look at it like that, um, especially the rather Shakespearean scene between David and Young Felony, where they are having this banter and they're going back and forth, and it's kind of like a combination of the dozens and signifying and this rapport, right? That's where rap comes from, this rapport that they have kind of going back and forth. It's lyrical, it's telling a story, it's like reading a Shakespearean play. And of course, Spike invites those people into it. It's got a bit of Baz Luhrmann in it, right? And he kind of does that. But Spike has always had those kinds of musical elements. One of the complaints that I saw was like there's music all throughout the whole thing. And I'm like, have you never watched the Spike Lee film? He's always got music underneath the dialogue and like everything. Some people were saying that some parts of the music was misplaced, and I can understand people saying that. However, I think, again, if we're watching this as a film that is simultaneously a love letter to hip hop, but also a critique of what has happened to the culture, to the music, and it's using hip hop to kind of represent our larger culture, you can understand why he might beat you over the head with some really loud jazz music. Right? I heard people saying it's like out of place. It doesn't fit the scene. I was like, to me, it absolutely fits the scene. He's painting over this. He doesn't want or need the hip hop underneath it. He doesn't need that as the backdrop. He's like, we need to get back to the basis. And so, in some ways, I think that he's using music and this louder music. If you don't think Spike knows how to be subtle with music and you honestly have not watched his films, as often as he incorporates music as as a character in the film, you have to watch that. You have to hear the volume changes. You have to hear the overbearing nature of them as part of the character. Okay, he's like, this is where it's all from. Reminder, reminder, reminder. Now, that's where one of the areas that I critique Spike, particularly in this last stage of his career, because he is in the final stages of his career, is he still makes films with a scarcity mindset. And it doesn't matter that he is Spike MFN Lee, okay? One of the greatest auteurs and independent filmmakers of all time, okay? Doesn't matter that his name resonates around the globe. He still sometimes operates from this scarcity mindset, like, they're not gonna let me make another movie. they're not gonna let me make another movie. Even when he's done Kickstarters, even when he's worked out these like individual deals, he's got the first, I believe, Amazon Prime deal for a film. Even when he's able to do stuff like that, his films still scream, I gotta do everything. I gotta get it all in here. I gotta make sure that what I'm giving to you, you gonna get everything. Because they may not let me do this again. And there's always that urgency that I recognize in his films. I do think he has a lot of fun when he makes or remakes films like Kurosawa's films and makes, you know, he did Old Boy and, you know, I think he has fun. He did Ganja and Hess. He remade that one. I think he has fun when he gets to interpret the works or reinterpret the works of people that he admires or that he looks up to. I think he has fun. And I think he had some fun with this one as well. Um, but it's hard for me to see this as anything other than a love letter to New York and to the Bronx, and then really kind of a plea for us to save hip hop culture. And I think it situates itself as we see so many so-called old school artists releasing new projects, all right, or having things come out. There's another film, as a documentary out called The Sixth Borough, and it kind of looks at all these artists that come from Long Island and how Long Island artists have shaped hip hop. De La Soul is constantly performing. Raekwon just dropped an album. Ghostface Killah just dropped an album. Wu-Tang dropped an album. They just did their final tour. Little Brother just did their final tour. There's folks who have been in this game for a really long time who are kind of coming back. Redman dropped an album. Redman's got a song that features every damn Jersey artist except for the Fugees. It was a banger this summer. Did you hear it? Who knows? But they're out here making this music, and so this film kind of gets situated in it, and it's almost like there's this collective reckoning of like, y'all, if we don't do something now about hip hop, we're gonna lose it forever. And so that's how I was watching this film. Um, I just want to say Washington never needs to rap again, but I really did love that exchange. You know, we're thinking about Spike and his hyperbole, right? So he names this character Young Felony. He names the record Stacking Hits. Like, come on, y'all. Like, Spike plays with minstrelsy a lot too. I don't know if you all recognize that in his film. He plays with minstrelsy a lot. He kind of turns minstrelsy on its head, or he brings it out in these hyperbolic ways, and it's just like, ha ha, you know. And he plays with that as a tease. But we also know that Stax record was a hit, so it's also a shout out to that in that way. I really loved the free young felon scene where he's going into this courtroom. And there's all these people outside cheering free young felon as if he did not just kidnap someone and try to ransom them for $17.5 million. dollars. Um, Good commentary on the support of the people that continue to harm our communities. Aaron McGruder, in my, you know, where are you, by the way? You'd be welcome. Just come, just drive. Trey and Matt Parker could get $1 billion or whatever or $50 million to come back and make South Park. I'm sure you could come back. But anyway, he commented on that as well when talking about R. Kelly, and you know, Spike kind of jumps into that as well. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, we continue to support these people that are harmful. Look at how the whole Diddy situation, you know, went. Again, R. Kelly, all the support that Chris Brown continues to get. I'm not supposed to be talking about him just yet, but that's a whole other story. So, you know, I think about that. That was a really dope scene. And I think that Young Felon, and I've been hearing people say that they didn't like A$AP Rocky. I thought he was fantastic. I thought that he did exactly what he needed to do. And his character kind of represents this hope for the future of hip hop. And like Denzel kind of represents the reluctant like OGs who they need to come in and save hip hop, but they have to let go of their ego and become mentors. So while all of them are dropping these albums and it's cool, and we're like, yeah, we also need y'all to do more mentoring. We need y'all to bring up the next generations because you're still trying to chase that dollar that the white man was dangling. And while you're still trying to do that, these young people are coming up. They're not learning how to perform hip hop in school. They're not learning, where are they learning it from? They're learning it online. They're going on social media. That's why everything is so terrible. So it's kind of like, I feel like Spike is making a request for this kind of intergenerational support. He's like, we can do this. Put the ego down, put the guns down, put the anger down, and come together. And I really just kind of looked at this as like this is like hip hop cinema. This is, I could say so much more about that, but I just think that that is where Spike was going with this. Spike does his usual. He has his returning players. He has collaborated many times with Denzel Washington. Nicholas Turturro had a cameo, and it's funny because he was playing Frankie the Lunatic, right? Which made me think of the Philly Fanatic, kind of just whatever. But he's very much, had this cameo, which was pretty awesome. Rosie Perez has a cameo. You remember her from Do the Right Thing. Ilfenesh Hadera, who plays uh, King David's wife. I had some issues with that because she's like 38, 39 years old. Denzel is like 97. Like them being married, even though they colored his hair and did what they did to try to make him seem younger, which I just thought was totally unnecessary. It still felt weird. And I struggle with the ageism in just Hollywood in general. Um, the men are allowed to age and the women are not. And so these men like Denzel will continue to get older and older, but their leading ladies stay the same ages, right? And that's usually often half their ages. And so I got an issue with that. But that's not speaking against her. She has worked with Spike Lee many times. She's also a super, super dope activist, really is like Pan-Africanist activist. So she's awesome. Love her. And I like to see in her in there. She always serves Michael Michelle for me. And kind of feeling like, again, there's some intergenerational thing happening there. Um, his cinematographer, Matthew Libatique, he's worked with him on She Hate Me, Inside Man. So when Spike likes someone's work, he will keep working with them. And it probably is a lot easier to just be with people who get what you're talking about, right? They there with you. Spike is best when he brings in other, excuse me, writers and collaborators, right? Um, when he gets into that ego space, which is very like Tyler Perry, and ironically, I think that Tyler is inspired by people like Spike who do a lot of the stuff, written, directed, all that kind of stuff. But he also needs to learn to bring in other people. I think Spike has gotten better with that. People that he trusts to help tell him the stories. Um, I thought the script could have been stronger, but also this is Spike Lee. When's the last time Spike had a strong script with original material? I don't think that that's what Spike. I'm sorry, y'all. There's certain things that I just don't think people should be looking for in Spike Lee films. And I've never thought of him as the best script writer. Black Klansman was good. I don't care what nobody say. That was well written. I enjoyed that a lot. But Malcolm X, but he already had source material for that. Same, actually, Black Klansman. He does best when he has source material, right? It's something that he can work from. When he's coming up with his own stuff, it's like, oh, maybe 3 out of 5 at best, right? So I don't go in looking for like stuff, but again, going back to that exchange between King David and Young Felon, I thought that was brilliant. Um, the song that Young Felon was doing that was supposed to be this hot song, it was intentionally ridiculous. Again, you guys got to go back and watch Bamboozle. Watch how Spike approaches this kind of minstrelsy and the hyperbole and flips it, right? And he's a big, big, big signifier. I'll put a link in the description to the when I keep saying signifying so that we're on the same page, you know what I'm talking about. But Spike is really good at that. And so I think that that's part of what elevates the script in many ways. I love Spike's repetitive shots. Repetition is Black cultural storytelling. You sit and listen to an elder talk, and they're gonna say the same words over and over for emphasis, and that goes back to Kemet. If you look, and I've studied ancient Egyptian a little bit, like in order for emphasis to be made in a line, they would repeat the characters. So if you saw three of them in a row, it meant very, okay, or there was some emphasis on that. That is just the way that we talk. When Black people are talking and we're clapping our hands, we're doing these kinds of things for emphasis. A lot of it is repetitive. So Spike, when he does these repetitive shots, he's like, it's an echo, right? It's almost a black preacher echo in some ways, right? So I just think that that's an aspect of Black cultural storytelling that some people like will critique Spike for, like, why is he showing? And they're like, oh, the editing's bad. And I'm like, in this particular film, I thought it was a little scrappy with editing, but also there are moments that I'm like, I'm watching them and I'm seeing Spike and his vision, and I can see how some people are like, oh, that was bad editing. No, a lot of this stuff for Spike is absolutely intentional. Okay. Of course, then he has like, his moving scene. That is his signature. It is there all the time. I thought this was brilliantly done with Aesop Rocky. I mean, first of all, he's got a beautiful face. Like model, I mean, he's modeled for Gucci, I believe, and others, but like he's got a beautiful face. He's just I just thought he was fantastic in this film. I see people saying that he sucked. I'm like, what are you talking about? I thought he played exactly what he needed to play. He played the personification of a totally co-opted and incorporated hip hop that needs saving. And it was so interesting that he had this character begging and saying, I don't want to be here. Let me go. I want to die. Right? Kind of like, does hip hop want to die? Does hip hop want to be done? Is hip hop looking for a way to be resurrected and to come back? Right? Um, yeah, yes, Spike Lee is very message heavy. He does often bring the sledgehammer. I do think that in this particular film, he was hitting a little bit heavier than he needed to. And I haven't seen heaviness like this since She Hate Me, which anyway. But, sometimes he can really do that. And I think that he definitely was doing that, right? I don't need AI to tell me what I already know, you know, all this stuff like that. But then I don't know. I just feel like where I find the script to be a bit disjointed was the transitions between the hyperbole signifying and a minstrelsy and the other stuff wasn't as smooth. And so there's a bit of whiplash, right? So I remember putting in my notes about Young Felony, like, why is he talking about money making Manhattan? Like, nobody talks. We don't really, I mean, yes, it is money making Manhattan, and that is definitely a hip hop cultural reference. It is an iconic statement. Boogie Down Bronx, Money Making Manhattan, Strong Island, all these things that these names that we have. But we don't really say those things in casual conversation anymore. So he injects things that are a little bit over the top, a little bit too over explanatory. Doesn't need to do that. It's okay. So, I'm thinking about some of those moments. I just really feel like it's a love letter to hip hop, an attempt to reclaim its origins and inspire people to not let it die. Because King David could have let Young Felony die and go, and he's just like, let me go. I want to, I don't want to be here. And he's like, no. I'm not gonna let you go, right? And I thought that that was the thesis of this film. Um, Shout out to A24 on the apartment door. You'll see the A24 plug there. I'm always noticing things. I don't like the Rivian product placement. It's a lot of product placement, but I also know that as an independent filmmaker, Spike has to go and kind of pull resources where he can. So there's definitely Rivian product placement there. It's an electric SUV that a lot of folks have been looking at. So I don't care for stuff like that, but also understanding you gotta do what you gotta do because they're not really out here trying to fund black cinema like that, unless you are working for Marvel or, that kind of thing. I am actually I'm gonna give Highest to Lowest a 4 out of 5 hearts. Um, You don't have to like it. Remember, I'm not telling you what you need to like and what you don't need to like. I enjoyed this film. I enjoyed it. Definitely I can probably think of 5 or 6 other Spike Lee films that are worse than this. And not to me, not that this is bad. I don't think that this is a bad film. It's not 5 hearts for me because there are some areas where I'm just like, no, that ain't hitting. That ain't what it's supposed to do. But overall, I think how you watch this film and how you look at the characters and how you understand Spike as a filmmaker and the intentional decisions that he makes with the use of music, with the use of iconography, with the writing and the script, how he plays with directing and interactions, even just the shots that he makes and how important they are to what he's trying to say. There's a lot of times where Spike Lee is speaking and no one's saying anything, right? And that's one of the things that I love most about his filmmaking. Um, I'm interested in what you all think. Definitely drop it in the comments. Thank you. I know this was a longer one than I usually do, but I just thought that there was a lot here. There's a lot here. I'm actually gonna watch it again to see if there's anything that I missed. But that's really I enjoyed this film. I do recommend you go seeing it. I wanted to see it in the theaters, but I wasn't feeling well because the surgery that I recently had. But I did buy my ticket to support. It is now on Apple TV. You can go and watch it on Apple TV. I do recommend you go see this. Support Black art. Support this kind of Black art. I thought it was good. It's still Spike Lee. Spike Lee is one of the most important griots, and I don't care how you feel about him. We can critique him. We can talk about all kind of stuff, but there has been no more prolific Black filmmaker than Spike Lee. Um, and the next is Oscar Micheaux. And the reason why I don't put Oscar Micheaux over Spike Lee is because Spike blew the industry up by being who he is. And so I do believe that we do owe him some honor and respect for what he's done. I don't count Tyler Perry because he's not a filmmaker to me. He's just a dude in a robe. All right. So, like my video, share it with people, subscribe to my channel, and I'm definitely interested in what you all have to say about Highest to Lowest. All right. Take care.